Welcome. I wish you all a good health. I'm Uncle Badger and welcome to part 4 of my book hoard videos. First off, I'd like to start with a couple of books that I missed out from part 3. They slipped out of vision, and well, I'll cover those now. There is an author called Thomas Sheridan, and he's done a book, this one, Sorcery, and also The Druid Code. There we are, trying not to get the reflections on. You can see me in the reflection on the Druid's Code, reflection of the screen. Well, yeah, there's Sorcery and The Druid Code, both by Thomas Sheridan. He self-publishes both of these, and he has a few channels. He has 3 YouTube channels. They're really quite interesting. He has quite an interesting view on things. I think he calls himself a chaos pagan, chaos druid. I think a chaos pagan. Well, a lot of his stuff's quite interesting. He has some sort of like how to view the modern world from a magical point of view. He's been into magic since he was in his teens, but both of those books, they look at things from sort of like a magical perspective, how sort of to do magic, there's turning from your normal way of thinking and just altering it slightly, going down a different angle, just changing the angle slightly. I quite like using the term angle. It's sort of changing stuff, just turning stuff slightly, just turning your view slightly. I just quite like the term. I've used it in regards to Alan Moore, and I think I was using it, the term coming at things from a different angle, viewing things. Yeah, I think I was using that last episode in part 3. So, but yeah, I quite like the idea of angles and stuff converging and converging points. Though that does sort of remind me of Dreams in the Witch House by H.P. Lovecraft. It's certain configurations of angles in a corner of a room, and it opened up a portal, and there was an evil witch coming out from the astral realm with her familiar Browner Jenkins, a large rat with a person's head. Yeah, it's just to do with angles and things. It's like, yeah, it's just generally, I think it's like seeing the world with different angles, see different things. It all seems to be different views and perception and stuff, and using angles as a way of describing that seems to fall into place for me. That is, just not necessarily for anyone else, but for me it does. But yeah, I quite like these 2 books. That one has quite a lot to do with megaliths in Ireland and comparing more recent thinking with the way the monolith and megalith builders must have thought, that the megaliths are probably a lot older than we think. Some stuff's, yeah, it's about magical thinking and comparing it to old ways. And this one's also sort of like a how to adjust your thinking to think magically. So yeah, both pretty good. It's if you're wanting to get into more sort of, meditative things and stuff where you use sort of mind magic. I know there's several different branches of magic. There's herbalism and things and stuff. If you're wanting sort of to do workings with gods and stuff, it could be quite useful for seeing things at a different angle. But Now on to the main part of this video. I got together a bit of a pile of it's sort of inspiring novels, mystically inspiring novels. There are a few odd things out and stuff, but I'm sort of the opinion that writing fiction can be a form of shamanry. So, because people sort of, a number of authors, they sort of disappear into the world they've built, and then their writings are basically translating these worlds into written word, into reality. So in a way, I see that as a form of channeling. I think I've talked about it in a couple of my other videos, previous videos, shown books of authors that I think have perhaps channeled their work, sort of perhaps seen views of an alternate realm, perhaps done something shamanic, whether by accident or on purpose. But here we go. I'll leave that one till last. But all that pile till last. The first one is a friend of Steve Moore's, and it is a book by Alan Moore, no relation. It's the last in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It has Prospero, who was based on John Dee, who was the original 007, who also has the newer 007 peering in through the window. And you have people like, there's Emma Peel, Mina Harker from Dracula, lots of different things in the background. I think that's meant to be the Necronomicon. But try and to help with some of the pages, comes with these canny special glasses. Of course I've got to wear them, haven't I? And I think it actually goes with my hat. I would put them on properly. I sort of feel like doing the rest of the video like this, but I don't think it'd be very practical. But yes, parts of the right, there we go. Parts of the book are in 3D. Yeah, that's blurry because it's in 3D. But it covers several things that there's even sort of, well, partly the back panel. Of course you have, there we go, a certain Mr. Alan Moore, no relation, in the driving seat. Yeah, it's sort of, this one's the last in the series, and it sort of ties things together. And yeah, there seem to be several principles that he's included in there, as he ties in the previous 3 volumes and also the Nemo trilogy. But here we go. Marion Zimmer Bradley, The Mists of Avalon. I know with some of the Arthurian groups that hold, I think I've got a bit of fluff in there, that hold a lot of the Arthurian legends in high regard. This is quite an important work. Big sturdy novel, 980 pages. Yeah, I've heard this. This has been recommended quite a number of times. Quite a lot of people seem to regard it quite a lot. Here we've got bit of a stack of 5 books here. We have Michael Moorcock, the Cornelius Quartet. The first book of that is the Jerry Cornelius series set in the 60s. It has him visit Hollow Earth at one point, but that's the entire series of 4 books by him. Show this one next. There's Coram, the Prince in the Scarlet Robe. That's the entire trilogy. And I've got something spilt on the front, it looks like. Not sure. But Michael Moorcock again. The first Coram trilogy. Then we have, I think that's the first in the second Coram trilogy. Yeah, it seems to be based on Celtic myth. Particularly this second trilogy seems to be based on Celtic mythology. There's lots of Celtic names and stuff, and Coram himself is sort of he's almost sort of elvish in a sense, and he's got into myths and legends of men. He's gone into the humans' myths and legends as some sort of great god, this hero that can be brought forth to help them. With the second trilogy of Coram, it's a bit strange. There's this whole thing about, I think it's the Vada Voiga. So I can find it in here. The Foyer Mior. The Foyer Mior, they are the cold people, and they're covering the world. As they encroach, they cover the world in ice and snow and cold mist. And one of them's a version of Hernunnos with the Wild Hunt. And it sort of clicked in my head that what were the Wild Hunt doing in the third Witcher game? They'd covered other worlds in ice and encroaching ice and frost and stuff. And it sort of pinged in my head and with the next book, it's one of the Elric books. And it's a bit odd about the Witcher game, because there's Elric there. He looks a bit like Geralt, doesn't he? Yeah. Well, to me he does. Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, Elric was out first in I think 1964, and it's a couple of similarities there. But the thing about Michael Moorcock, and here's another one in the second Coram trilogy. The thing about Michael Moorcock is he came up with this system of chaos and law. These two opposing sides, it could be love and hate, but mainly it's described as chaos and law. And there's a central thing trying to keep balance between the two. The universe exists in this balance, and sometimes it sways and moves, and there are these eternal champions, or it's got the multiverse theory, so they're intersecting planes of reality, and there's a single eternal champion who has versions of himself in all of those realities, trying to keep the balance, sway the balance. Coram's one of those, and Elric is another. But it's Michael Moorcock drew the Chaos Star. It looks like the compass with the arrowheads pointing out. You know, yeah, north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest. Yeah, he drew, and it got picked up by Chaos Magic. So yeah, it's one of the things that inspired Chaos Magic. Yeah, with balancing everything. On to some of the next stuff. We have Philip K. Dick again. This is I mentioned Philip K. Dick in video number 2 and video number 1. In video number 1 I showed the first and third books in Philip K. Dick's Valis trilogy, which was Valis and the Transmigration of Timothy Archer. This is the middle book, this is the second book, The Divine Invasion. It's about someone who's deep in cryogenic suspension. Yeah, and it's sort of them doing sort of like a bit of an Adam and Eve, firing up humanity again, that one. Yeah, he's a very curious fellow. I think in my second part of this series of videos about books, I showed his exegesis, and yeah, it's very curious. It had strange things happen that are almost unbelievable, but I have a feeling they really did happen to him. It's yeah, it's people. Some people think he went crazy because he had too many drugs, but why would he devote so much more than like 15 years after an addiction to something that was so powerful? Something that happened, I think, after his drug use, but it's quite curious. Still a bit of doubt as to whether it happened. It's quite far-fetched what happened to him, but yeah, what should be? I talk a little bit more in the first and second videos. Look him up. Terence McKenna also talks about him quite a bit. But on we go. Here's a novella. Silver in the Woods. There is a wild man who lives in the deep quiet of the green hollow, and he listens to the wood. Tobias, tethered to the forest, does not dwell on his past, but he lives a perfect, unremarkable existence with his cottage, his cat, and his dryads. When Green Hollow Hall acquires a handsome, intensely curious new owner in Henry Silver, everything changes. Old secrets better left buried are dug up, and Tobias is forced to reckon with his terrible past, both the green magic of the woods and the dark things that rest in his heart. Yeah. And that, sorry, Emily Tesh. I think I've seen her on the folk horror revival page, I think. But here we go, the next thing. It's the first 2 books in the Lioness trilogy by Jack Vance. It's a sort of very much influenced on Arthurian legend, and it's his sort of more fantastical take that where. See if there's a map. I think, yeah, Lyonesse. Britain's up here. And I think this is meant to be the coast of France, and this is Spain. Yeah, Britain, Ireland. Yeah, it's Lyonesse, fictional land where King Arthur dwelt. But yeah, that it was a real place. And something I've mentioned a bit before. So graphic novel version. Collection of, I think, 4 graphic novels of The Witcher. Doesn't he look a bit like Elric? But yeah. Yeah, because I'm quite impressed by The Witcher's use of a lot of old folklore. Yeah, needless to say, it's just like a lot of the things that live in the woods and strange beings and, you know, Slavic folklore. Yeah, it's still very, very intriguing on its own. I can see why it's all so popular. But yeah, that's an omnibus of 4 separate graphic novels. What we have next is a novel by a lady in a group, sort of like an online group, online community I'm with. That's Eternal Blood by Melissa. I'm never quite sure if your surname's pronounced Angle or Angel. I presume it's Angel. And she's an American author. Yeah, and it's a sort of a vampire paranormal romance thing. Yeah, she's I'll try and get the light properly. If you can see that, Melissa Angel, Angell. Worth taking a look. She's got this is from Amazon, but it's yeah. And next we go on to a couple of not quite books. I know this is mostly book things. It's a sort of fiction inspired by mystical, possibly channeled and stuff. But yeah, in one video, it was the second or third video, I showed several books on Arthurian legend, and I spoke of how I was fascinated by the legend of the Fisher King. There are 2 separate versions of the tale that I know of, and there seems to be something very important that's being talked about but seems obscure. It seems to relate to a number of other things, but the film is The Fisher King by Terry Gilliam. Yeah. Robin Williams, Jeff Bridges. Yeah, it's a sort of a modern retelling of that. And it's I don't know, it's a tale that seems to have stuck in the back of my mind. It's something that's, yeah, always sort of, yeah, something to think about. There's stuff to do with piercing water and piercing into, as a metaphor for piercing through into another realm, into the spirit realm, the other world and stuff, with the Fisher King story in general. But enough about that. There is also a set of magazines that might be curious to people of magical, paranormal, mystical, folkloric sort of bend. It's the 14 Times, not just completely wacky, far-fetched, not completely wacky, far-fetched conspiracy theories. They normally do regard the sources and stuff, and they do articles about mummies in modern times and stuff. Yeah, Jack Chick, the guy that did a load of Christian propaganda cartoons, they're quite thick and stuff, and quite thick, about a good 80 pages and stuff. Here we go. This is a general selection. This one's from November last year. Book of Ghosts. There was a book in the 70s. This sort of commemorates it. It's been republished. But and this one, Ghost Stories for Christmas, looks into. It's got an article looking into Christmas ghost story tradition. So that's with a lot of M.R. James when they did the TV dramatisations in the late 60s and into the 70s, with things like Warning to the Curious, Oh Whistle and Owl Come to You My Lad, stuff like that. Doing some Dickensian ones as well. Well, I quite like 14 times the quote sources, myth conceptions. Sorry, that myth was in the dear old days. Christmas cards were all about baby Jesus and the three wise men and the stable. It's only in our secular degenerate age that non-religious cards have appeared. In fact, the opposite is true. Secular Xmas cards predated religious ones. Yeah. But yeah, it does take stuff with a bit of a pinch of salt. The stuff about the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. They've done a number of articles on that, but that Rendlesham Forest thing took a good 2 or 3 pages. Fairies and folklore and stuff. In Fortiana. They do an archaeology section. They normally have about 3 big articles. And then they do several pages on book reviews. And yeah, sci-fi and fantasy roundup. Review on Celine that I showed the other episode. But I'm quite impressed. They do film reviews and people write in telling people of their experiences. They've got a list of sources. They're not all serious, but also there is the magazine Pagan Dawn. Comes out one issue each season, so 4 a year. Each have a theme about that's winter, autumn. Yeah. And in one, there's normally have a lay hunting section. And in one, I met one of the guys that wrote an article on for one. It's one of these ones, the ethics of cursing, and I believe it also included use of the King James Bible as well. It's sort of like the moralities of cursing. But yeah, I think I know someone else that might have dealings with Pagan Dawn magazine. I know this is available in England. Might be available in parts of Europe. I'm a little unsure about parts of America. Presumably they could. Perhaps there are issues on eBay, but there's normally a wide variety of seasonal articles for that specific issue that corresponds with whichever season. I think in one issue they had a look at Jinn magic. Jinn as in genies. And then it was a bit odd. I saw a lot of references in groups to Jinn magic and people asking about how they start practicing it and how they start learning. A bit odd, a bit synchronistic. It was just sort of like all I heard about was people wanting to practice Jinn magic. But that is enough for today. I wish you all good health, a good evening, a good night, a good morning, good afternoon, whichever suits. Good health to you all. Goodbye.